What if chaos isn't madness, but memory? What if every bullet she fires, every grin she flashes, every explosion she ignites, is a scream from a girl who was never heard? This is not just the story of Jinx, the blue-haired maniac from Arcane and League of Legends. This is the anatomy of a fractured psyche, the echo of a soul abandoned, the chaos born when the feminine shadow is wounded and left to rot. We see her twirl, we see her laugh, we see her paint the world in madness, but behind the smeared lipstick and trembling hands is a child, not dead, not gone, just shattered. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is not the villain. It is the part of us that was denied, repressed, discarded. And when the denied part is feminine, nurturing, intuitive, emotional, it doesn't turn into fire, it turns into chaos. Jinx isn't insane. She's the daughter of pain. She's the embodiment of the wounded feminine archetype, torn between the innocent girl who just wanted to be loved and the vengeful ghost who learned that love means nothing without power. Carl Jung once said, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." Jinx is the proof, because the brighter her sister shined, the darker her shadow grew, and you, yes you, might have a Jinx inside you. Maybe you've silenced your feelings too long. Maybe you've been told to be sweet, soft, obedient, until the rage buried in your ribs started laughing on its own. This isn't just a character analysis. This is a confession, because when we study Jinx, we aren't just looking at her. We are looking into the mirror. So welcome to UMBRA INSIGHT, where shadow psychology meets dark motivation. Today we dive into the wreckage. We pick up the pieces and we ask, what if your chaos is just the language of your abandoned self? Let the darkness speak. To understand Jinx is to understand what happens when the feminine shadow is not just ignored, but betrayed. Carl Jung believed that every psyche is made of opposites, light and dark, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine. But our society favors one side. We praise logic, but shame emotion. We applaud strength, but scorn sensitivity. We idolize the warrior and bury the weeper. And so, half of the soul is exiled. The feminine shadow, our inner softness, our raw emotion, our ache to be held without being fixed, is silenced. But silence doesn't heal it. Silence poisons it. Jinx was once powder, a tender, wide-eyed girl who just wanted to help. But she was told she wasn't enough, that her feelings were too much, that her mistakes were unforgivable. And in that moment, she began to rot. Psychologically, what happened was this: the child's authentic self was rejected, so the mind split. One half tried to be lovable, desperate to win approval. The other half, the one abandoned in grief, turned into rage, chaos, and madness. This is what Jung called the shadow. And when it is feminine, it often expresses not with violence, but with instability, emotional swings, unpredictable reactions, deep fear of abandonment, and a hunger to be seen, so intense it can become destructive. Jinx laughs while crying. She kills while begging to be loved. She wants to be held, but pushes people away. That's not insanity. That's the wounded feminine screaming through a mask of chaos. This is the cost of repressing the shadow. It doesn't disappear, it devours. But this isn't just about Jinx. It's about you, me, all of us. How many girls were told they were too much, too emotional, too dramatic, too wild, too angry, too sensitive? How many times were tears treated as weakness? How often was silence rewarded over truth? Jinx is what happens when a soul learns that to survive, it must become a spectacle, louder than its pain, stranger than its sadness, scarier than its shame. And still, deep inside, she's just a girl who never got to cry in peace. Before she became Jinx, she was Powder, and Powder was soft. She wasn't a soldier, she wasn't a fighter, she was a child. Fragile, uncertain, brimming with the innocent desire to belong. She clung to her sister Vi like a lantern in the dark. To Powder, Vi was more than family. She was her anchor, her protector, her proof that the world still had something gentle left in it. And so when Vi said, "You can help," Powder believed her. When Vi smiled at her, Powder felt brave. When Vi held her hand, Powder felt real. But the world Powder lived in was not soft. It was a world where softness got you killed, where gentleness was punished, where mistakes were not forgiven. So when her invention malfunctioned, when her good intentions led to death, Powder was met not with comfort, but with abandonment. Vi turned her back, and in that moment, something shattered, not her bones, her psyche, the innocent child who only wanted to be loved. And in the echoing silence that followed, something darker was born. Jinx didn't come out of nowhere. She was a response, a defense, a monster born from betrayal. Powder needed a way to survive. She couldn't be soft anymore. She couldn't trust anymore. She couldn't feel anymore. So she made a new identity. Someone wild, someone loud, someone no one would ever dare abandon again. She painted her lips red, not for beauty but to cover the taste of blood. She laughed not from joy but from pain, echoing into madness. She fought not for victory, but to punish the world that called her too much. And she renamed herself Jinx, not a name but a curse, because if they thought she was bad luck, then she would become their worst nightmare. This is how the shadow takes over. When the hurt child is never seen, the monster steps in to be noticed. Jinx is the shadow in full bloom, unfiltered, untamed, unapologetic. But if you listen closely, even in her chaos, she calls for help. Even in her madness, she longs for touch. Even in her rage, she remembers love. Jinx is not just a villain. She's a mirror, And maybe she's your reflection. Let's get one thing clear. Jinx is not insane. She's in pain, but her pain is wearing makeup, dancing with weapons, and speaking in riddles. In Jungian psychology, what Jinx is experiencing is called a psychic split, a fracture in the ego that occurs when the inner child is too hurt to stay whole. When the psyche breaks, the conscious mind tries to maintain control, but the shadow leaks through. It doesn't ask permission. It demands to be seen. Jinx is not crazy because she hears voices. She's haunted because no one ever heard hers. Let's break it down. In every person, there is a version of the self that we show the world, what Jung called the persona. And then there is the shadow. The shadow holds everything we've suppressed: our rage, our sorrow, our shame, our unfiltered truth. For most people, the shadow whispers, but for Jinx, it screams. Why? Because the feminine side of her was never allowed to grieve, never allowed to be angry, never allowed to say, "I'm not okay." Powder, the inner child, was told to disappear. So Jinx, the shadow, came out to protect her. This is not insanity. This is survival. Jinx doesn't hallucinate because she's broken. She imagines because her psyche had no other way to hold the pain. In trauma therapy, this is known as internalized fragmentation, when parts of us split off and take on lives of their own. Jinx's chaos is not random. It's the language of abandonment. In Jungian archetypes, the feminine isn't weak. It's primal. It's emotion, intuition, nurturing. But when wounded, it becomes chaotic, explosive, and unpredictable. That's Jinx. She doesn't just lash out. She performs. She turns her pain into art, into sound, into terror. Every bomb she makes is a love letter from her broken inner child. Every giggle is a cry no one answered. Every mask is a memory she's afraid to face. This is what the wounded feminine shadow looks like. Not pitiful, not silent, but dangerous and deeply misunderstood. Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jinx is the embodiment of that warning. She is not fate. She is a scream that was never made conscious. She is the ghost of what happens when we silence little girls until they burn the world to be heard. Now that we've seen Jinx's story, let's talk about yours. You don't need blue hair or bombs to carry a shadow. You just need pain you never got to express. Pain that turned into silence. Silence that turned into anxiety. Anxiety that grew into chaos. If you've ever felt like your emotions were too much, if you've been told to calm down when all you wanted was to be heard, you might be carrying a wounded feminine shadow too. But here's the truth. You don't need to suppress it. You need to listen to it. That's where shadow work begins. Start by asking, what parts of myself have I hidden to survive? Did you learn to smile when you wanted to cry? Did you stay quiet to keep the peace while your heart screamed for truth? Did you bury your intuition just to be accepted? These are wounds, invisible, but heavy The feminine shadow often hides in places like people-pleasing, emotional overreactions, deep fear of being too much, the inability to say no without guilt, rage that arrives without warning. Recognizing your shadow isn't shameful. It's sacred. It means you're ready to reclaim what was once lost. Write a letter, not to someone else, to your shadow. Write as if you were writing to the part of you that was never allowed to speak. The version of you who cried behind closed doors, who swallowed her voice, who broke quietly. Let it out, dear shadow. I know you were hurt. I know you screamed in silence. And I'm here now. I'm listening. Let your pen become the bridge. Let the page become the altar. No edits, no judgment, just truth. Every morning, stand in front of a mirror, not to fix yourself, but to see yourself. Look into your own eyes and whisper, I see you, I hear you, you are not too much. This is how the feminine shadow begins to soften. She doesn't want to be punished. She wants to be embraced. Let her cry. Let her rage. Let her speak, not as a weakness, but as the beginning of power. Let's pause. Not to run from the chaos, but to face it. To sit beside the broken girl inside you, to hear her, to ask what no one else ever dared to ask her. Take a breath. Let the silence be sacred. Here are 4 questions to meet your feminine shadow. 1. What emotion have you been told is unacceptable, but never truly left you? Maybe it's rage, maybe it's grief. Maybe it's the longing to be held. What feeling have you buried so deep it became the soil your life grew from? 2. When did you first learn that being too much was dangerous? Was it when they called you dramatic, too sensitive, too emotional? What did you silence just to be loved? 3. Who would you become if you allowed your shadow to speak without shame? Not filtered, not censored, not polished. What would the wildest part of you say if it believed you would not abandon her? 4. What part of you still waits to be forgiven? That one moment you still carry. That one decision you keep punishing yourself for. What if your healing began not by forgetting, but by embracing the one who made the mistake? These are not easy questions, but neither is healing. The shadow doesn't need you to be fearless. It just needs you to be honest. You don't have to become Jinx, but maybe you need to listen to the girl inside who almost did. There was a girl. No one knew her name, not even she did. She wasn't the loudest. She wasn't the brightest. But she was always too much, too sensitive, too intense, too emotional. So they told her to calm down, to grow up, to stop being dramatic. And she tried to shrink herself, to laugh softer, to feel less, to smile even when something inside her was screaming. But the more she hid, the more she broke, until one day she found a journal. Empty, silent, waiting. That night, she wrote not to be understood, but to finally hear herself. "I'm still here," she wrote. Beneath the jokes, beneath the noise, beneath the girl they told me to be, "I'm still here," she wrote every night. Sometimes she sobbed, sometimes she raged, but slowly the chaos stopped biting and started whispering. And one morning, she stood in front of the mirror and didn't hate what she saw. She didn't feel healed, but she felt real. She didn't become perfect, but she became present. She learned that shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about facing yourself. She no longer needed to perform pain. She could transform it, and that was the moment she stopped being a warning and became a light. Jinx was never the villain. She was the evidence. The evidence of what happens when we silence the softest parts of ourselves. When we punish feeling. When we fear emotion more than emptiness. Jinx is what happens when the feminine shadow isn't integrated, but abandoned. She is not a threat. She is a mirror. And maybe the reason you're drawn to her is because somewhere inside you, you're still holding a broken little girl by the hand. And that's not weakness. That's where your power begins. This is the truth of shadow psychology. You don't need to destroy the chaos. You need to understand it. You don't need to bury your darkness. You need to befriend it, because the parts of you that you fear the most might be the ones that set you free. As we say here at UMBRA, insight. Embrace your darkness. It's the key to your light. Let the world call you too much. Let them say you're intense. Emotions don't make you weak. They make you real. And remember, what society calls madness might just be the truth they're too scared to hear. If this message found you, you're ready. You're ready to stop hiding, to stop apologizing for your depth, to rise, not by rejecting your shadow, but by walking with her. So if this moved you, if this made you breathe a little deeper, then this isn't the end. This is your beginning. Subscribe to UMBRA INSIGHT for more stories like this. Dive deeper into shadow work, dark motivation, and Jungian psychology. Share this with someone whose chaos might be the start of their freedom. You are not too much. You were just never seen properly. But now you are.